Well, hi. Welcome back to the Range Minded Podcast. I bet you thought, is Steve just done? No, I've just decided to take a little time away from the world, away from the podcast. Even a guy like me deserves a vacation once in a while, don't you think? By the way, I hope you had a Merry Christmas. And this may not come out before the new year, we'll see, but it is being recorded before the new year. Now, if I sound a little different, which I definitely do in my ear, I've got a new mic. My kids decided to give me a mic for Christmas, so I'm probably going to be messing with dials, and the sound might change here and there. That actually already sounds a little bit better than it did before. It's going to take me a minute to get tuned in. So thank you to my kids for thinking about their old man and his ridiculously non-money making hobby. Hopefully, again, you guys had an amazing Christmas. And, you know, Christmas just isn't about gifts. Yeah, it is cool to receive presents. It's so much better to give than it is to receive. And hopefully you had that experience. And really, ultimately, it's about remembering our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and his birth. So, like it or not, I don't care if that offends you. Honestly, I don't care. That's just how I believe. And if that makes you unsubscribe to me, I guess I didn't need you here anyways. But, I don't want to see you go, but don't let the door hit your ass on the way out, if that's how you feel. Probably shouldn't use ass and talk about the Savior at the same time in the same sentence. We'll just leave that in there. Anyways, welcome back to the Range Minded Podcast. My name is Steve, and I'm grateful to have you here, Steve Zimmerman. I wanted to, this episode, I don't know. I don't know how you're going to take this episode. There is some stuff brewing on both sides of the pond, if you will. And so this episode's going to kind of jump around between here and another country, and then we'll just try and tie this all together. Hopefully you'll be entertained by this. You might not be. But there definitely is, if you enjoy the shooting sports, if you enjoy the recreational side of shooting, especially competitive shooting, you're probably going to want to pay attention to this. You may already know this upcoming information, but if you don't and you enjoy particularly USPSA, you need to hear this. Okay? Let's just dive right into it. I have no idea how long this episode is going to take. I'm trying to keep them around 45 to 50 minutes. We'll see how this one goes. This could get a little spicy. But let's jump in. I've got my show notes here opened. There's really nothing for me to link for you in this episode. So we'll just do what we do and hope you enjoy it. If you like, by the way, I'm going to do this before we really get cranking in. If you like the Range Minded Podcast, please make sure you're subscribed, that you like the content. If you so desire, hit that bell icon if you're on YouTube. I can't remember what it is on Rumble. That way it notifies you when a new episode drops. This upcoming year, my goal is to actually work on the studio. So periodically you might see some changes behind me. I have some goals that will take place this year for inside the studio. And it requires changing a lot of stuff in the background and then putting stuff back. It should be cool. If what I have in my head comes out and fortifies and not fortifies, but shows up on the walls behind me, it should look pretty rad. So it just costs time and money. That being said, if you want to be part of the Patreon, I do have a Patreon, Range Minded Podcast. There are a couple different levels, and honestly, it's not that expensive. Right, it's $5 a month is my most expensive Patreon, but you don't have to if you don't want to. It's totally cool, but it definitely does. It does help. Every little bit helps. Also, I'm on all sorts of social medias. I spend way. I'm going to leave that in. Way too much time on Twitter. Way too much time. Honestly, it's a problem. Also, Instagram occasionally, Facebook rarely, once in a while. TikTok, extremely rare, but we'll see how it goes. Some of you also might be wondering how I did on the Gundies. Well, first of all, it was an amazing honor to be nominated, but I didn't win. I didn't even make the top 5. I actually reached out to the Gundies to see where I ranked. compared to the other guys in the podcast of the year. If you didn't look at it, if you didn't know, or if you didn't pay attention, there were some big names in the podcast of the year pile. And to just be in the same group with some of these huge podcasts was quite an honor, and I do greatly appreciate it. But I didn't win. They did invite me to go to the Gundies, which I probably won't go. That's January 19th. They'll announce the winners of all the categories. I probably won't go. Between time off for Christmas and New Year's and some of the projects we got going on at work, I don't think it's going to play in very well. That and SHOT Shows that week, and if I go to Vegas to go to the Gundies, then I'm going to want to stay for SHOT Show, which will turn from Monday to all the way till next Saturday, and then which would be rad. If you really want to see me go, then I guess you could always jump on the Patreon and make a donation. It would be really tough. I could technically probably take the time off work and make it work in reality, but I don't know. We'll see. I don't have a lot of time. It's only 3 weeks away, so 4 weeks away. We'll see. What else am I going to say? So, yeah, I just completely rambled on. We just lost like 10 minutes of content just because I'm blabbering on. All right, let's talk about this. So USPSA, if you do not know what USPSA is, I've talked about this before. It's the United States Practical Shooters Association. Now, USA is a national organization. It's a nonprofit. They have there are several areas. The country's broke up into areas. So you have Area 1 through, I have no idea how many areas there are. I'm in Area 2, I think, or maybe Area 1. And I think I'm in Area 1. And nonetheless, so they're broken up into areas. Each area holds matches, usually weekly. They'd have classifiers so people can keep track of how they're doing. It ranks shooters on depending how well they do on these classifiers. There's usually 1 to 3 or 5 classifiers in a match, depending how big the matches are. A ton of fun. Honestly, when you gamify target practice, it is a ton of fun. It does seem a little daunting because there's a timer, you're drawing from the holster, you're moving, you're shooting, all this while minding all the safety rules, listening to the range master. It's a ton of fun. And the match director, I guess it would be, but it's a lot of work on both sides, whether it be running USPSA or actually participating in some of the matches. It can be a lot of work and stressful if it's your first time. It's a ton of fun, though. Honestly, every time I shoot a match, I feel like my skills develop a little bit better. Honestly, I've been working on a gun build. If you want to see it, raise your hand if you want to see it. I can't tell if I'll show you here in a minute. But I've been working on a new gun build. It should be pretty rad for this year because we do a winter league here in Idaho. So, why am I bringing USPSA? Well, there's a guy named John Burt who originally lived in Washington. Now, USPSA started in Delaware, but is, I think, nationally organized in Washington State. So this guy, John Burt, I'm assuming that's how you say his name, B-I-R-D-T, Burt. What rhymes with shirt, Burt? I'm tired. He filed a lawsuit. So he was elected as area 2 director. So it's kind of a big deal to be elected into that position. I mean, obviously it's a national election is held for USPSA, and he won that position for Area 2. It is a big deal. Like, it's a big position to be in charge of all of Area 2. And that happened in the end of 2024. He was elected. Now his term or session, whatever you call it, it starts January 2025, which brings us to this year, which almost isn't anymore. So as soon as he gets in January of this year, 25, his attorney advises him, hey, something's a little fishy. This is the story I got. This is all alleged as far as I understand it. His attorney says, hey, John, why don't you look at the minutes? Something doesn't seem right about this organization. They're collecting dues from membership. So there must be meetings taking place. There must be meeting notes taking place. And where are the funds going? So John gets curious and he asks USPSA, the national director, like, hey, I kind of want to see what's going on. I know you guys should be holding meetings according to bylaws. We should be recording where these dues are going. Everything should be on the up and up, as with any organization that collects dues, especially nonprofits, right? So they tell him, nah, we're not going to give it to you. That's not your position. And he says, well, wait a minute. Like, I'm Area 2 director. I need to see where these funds are going. I need to know what's going on. And again, they said, no, we're not doing it. So Mr. Bird files a lawsuit. Let's see, let me jump down here. So in March 13th is when he files this lawsuit of this year, 25, in Skagit County. So here's the problem. So we know Washington is not the greatest pro 2A state in the union. We get that. So right away, that makes me worried. When there is a lawsuit filed against a pro 2A organization, one that helps thousands and thousands of folks better their skills and have a lot of fun doing it while exercising their constitutionally protected rights, he files this lawsuit. Okay. Now, the worst thing that could happen, and this is, says he doesn't want this. We'll talk about that a little bit, touch on that a little bit later. But Mr. Burt says he doesn't want dissolution of USPSA, but that really could happen. At the very least, he just wants transparency. He wants the courts to force the information available to him. Now, we could see dissolution is possible. That's what's scary. The dissolution of this organization is not out of the realm of possibilities. The state could easily cause them to forfeit the assets and then liquidate them all, and then disband USPSA because it's even though it was founded in Delaware, it is from Washington State. So, yeah, we're kind of worried, right? And the 2A community should be a little bit concerned about what's going on in Washington State. Now, I do not know Mr. Baird. I have never talked to the man. I don't know what his long-term goals are with this. Again, this is everything, all the research I found and the podcast that I was watching. This is just kind of the information that I've gathered. I saw membership never mind. So we'll see. Now, USPSA in March, they responded to this lawsuit. Okay, it said, we're compliant with the bylaws and Delaware state law. That's all they said. By the way, quote, unquote. And then in March of this year, they held a special board meeting voting Mr. Baird out of his position. I doubt he was there. I doubt he had any clue about it. But yeah, they booted him out. Okay, which I get if he's going to be a squeaky wheel, if he's going to be a thorn in the side of the organization. Sure, I understand it. But you would think that people in his area that voted him in, Area 2, would feel the same way. Now, the board meeting was, the votes were 6-1. So only one guy or gal, one member of the board, wanted to keep Mr. Baird in place. Again, you'd think that Area 2, where he's in charge of, would be a little bit more supportive, but it was 60% of the votes voted him out. Which is interesting. So I don't know if that tells to his character or I don't know. I can only speculate. Like I said, I do not know the man. I'm trying not to disparage him. I just don't know. Okay. So Bert, why do I see a couple of puppets in a boat fishing? You guys remember that Sesame Street skit? Bert fights back. Okay, he calls it a retaliation for firing him, for voting him out. And So it files a motion. Summary judgments got denied in June, and then the appeal was bounced. Okay. That's not where it ended. You'd think it would kind of die down, or we're just waiting, which we are waiting. This is going to kick back up early next year, early 26. Okay. But here's the problem. Since then, he's moved to Arizona. As far as I understand, I could be wrong about this. If somebody knows better, please put it down in the comments. But now the state, or whether he's in Arizona or the state of Arizona, just filed a federal lawsuit against USPSA. So this is a little bit deeper, okay? Now, USPSA is not a gun rights organization. In fact, I'd be willing to venture to say that there are some folks involved, maybe not in the board level, but of participants in USPSA that may not feel the same way that I feel about the Second Amendment, or maybe how you feel about the Second Amendment. They just like the gaming side, the match side of it all. And that's fine. Like the 2A is open to all of us. But with this national lawsuit, a federal lawsuit rather, this kind of makes it a bigger mess. So not only now is there the state of Washington that's being involved, well, at least where it was filed, excuse me. But now the feds are going to get involved and really look at finances and board meetings and board involvement. They're going to dive deeply into this organization, which could dissolve USPSA. Let's be honest. Will it happen? Probably not. I hope not. But the possibility is definitely there, especially if they find fraudulent misuse of funds. I mean, that's a big deal. And to see something like USPSA get dissolved sucks. Maybe I'm looking at it in a really naive set of eyes because I haven't really been involved in the organization any deeper than just here in Idaho. There might be so much more to the organization that maybe it is a deplorable organization. I don't know. I just enjoy running and gunning and trying to beat some of the other guys in this area when it comes to the hit factor. Get a higher hit factor, get some good time and some good solid hits. I hear Mike a lot when I shoot, and that's not a name. That means miss. I don't hear it all the time. I hear it too often, though. We'll see. Bert is claiming that with this lawsuit now that they're defaming him, right? It's a defamation lawsuit. There's I don't know if he's working or if he's retired, but the organization, he says the organization has been bad-mouthing him to the point where it's hurting him financially. But in turn, USPSA is saying that he's toxic. He was threatening board members. He was threatening members of the organization and all sorts of stuff. So, I mean, it's like a tit for tat, kind of a grade school fight. It's kind of, I don't know. It's a mess. But what I'm worried again is that USPSA, a pro 2A organization, is going to suffer because of either greed or hubris, or a combination of both. So just keep that in mind. If you're a member of USPSA and you have a little bit more information on this, I would love your insight. If you just shoot matches and you're not a member of USPSA, you probably don't. That's me. I'm not a member of the USPSA. I just shoot the matches. You can shoot a match without being a member, but the classifier means nothing if you're not a member. So I'd be curious to see if any of you guys have more info on this. Now, all this is just my understanding of the situation. It could be way, way off. Maybe I'm allowing my emotions to get in the way, but it makes me nervous. Now, I got this information by watching a video, a YouTube channel of a shooter named Ben Stoger. He's a shooter. He's an author. I think he's a GM in USPSA, not a general manager, but a grandmaster. I think. I don't know him well enough. I think he's up there. He's a good shooter. I mean, he's got some pretty entertaining content on YouTube as well. Mr. Burt was on one of his videos, and that's where I learned about this, and it really intrigues me. We'll see. I just want transparency. I want the organization to stay. because I enjoy shooting. I'm sure there's other organizations out there, but USPSA is definitely the most prominent, the biggest. Any state you go to, you can find a USPSA match. So I hope it doesn't disappear. But I mean, we'll see. It is what it is. All right, let's just jump to the next segment. Now this is all part of it, okay? Yes, this is related. And no, I'm not going to go on a long rant about the best ginger beer in the world. That's a Bundaberg ginger beer. That is a product of Australia. The best ginger beer in the world, in my opinion. Now, I'm a little biased. You may or may not know, I lived in Australia for just about 2 years, quite a while ago. It's been a long time. In Perth, Western Australia. Beautiful. Man, Australia is a beautiful country, even though everything there will try to kill you. Now, I talked in the previous episode, as far as I remember, because it's been a hot minute, we talked about some Australian gun laws and things that change and how you can't really compare United States to Australia. It's really not a one-to-one comparison. So, as you know, unless you are just waking up from a coma, a few weeks ago there was the Bondi Beach attack, which was totally Muslim extremists attacking a bunch of Jews during a Hanukkah celebration. There's no denying what it was. Okay? No designing. No confusion there. Unless you're an Australian Prime Minister, and then you don't want to say what it really was. So that's the most deadly mass shooting event, or at least the highest profile mass shooting event in the country of Australia since Port Arthur in 1996, or as they would say, 1996. Okay? Terrible. It was rough. Now, in consequence of what happened at Bondi Beach, if you remember, it was a father and a son, radical Islam members carried out an attack. They had a shotgun, or maybe 2 shotguns, and some bolt-action rifles. There's lots of videos out there. It's really easy to find that information out there. But no semi-autos, just bolt actions and pump actions really is what they were using. Okay. Now, let's see. Let's go through my notes here. After the Port Arthur massacre, there was obviously a huge change in Australian gun law. We've heard about it before. Now, they did not make guns illegal in Australia. So wherever you hear that information, or if that's your understanding of Australian gun laws, you're wrong. They did not strictly prohibit firearms in Australia after Port Arthur. They created a licensing scheme. They created a buyback scheme and a national registry. They also put restrictions on ammunition storage, licensing requirements. There were obviously some hefty things going on there. There was also some involvement with if you wanted to keep certain firearms, you had to be part of a shooting club. And they got rid of a vast amount of semi-automatic firearms. Either they were turned in or they were confiscated. Either way, whatever they procured from the buyback scheme, they destroyed. Now, that was in 96, okay? Since between 1996 and up to now, because they haven't created the buyback, or they've talked about a new buyback, but they haven't executed it yet. So between 1996 and 2025, there are over 4 million guns in Australia, which is actually more firearms exist within the boundary of Australia now than in 1996. Which tells you that guns aren't illegal. They're just harder to get. They're harder to possess. But law-abiding citizens will want to enjoy recreational shooting because they do not have a Second Amendment. That's the biggest difference between Australia and the United States. There is no Second Amendment guaranteeing the right to keep and bear arms for the purpose of self-defense of any sort of enemy, okay? Any kind of threat. That does not exist in Australia. So they're not buying guns for self-defense. If they use a gun in self-defense, they're in big trouble. any kind of self-defense, honestly. I think that's why, if you remember the Port Arthur, the Bondi shooting, when the Arab dude wrestled the rifle away from the guy, the terrorist attack guy, you know what I'm talking about, when he wrestled the gun away and he pointed the gun at the bad guy but didn't shoot. Now, a lot of folks are saying that he didn't know how to use the rifle, or maybe there was a jam, which could be right. I think he was going to shoot the terrorist, but chose not to out of fear of losing his freedom in Australia. That is my assumption, and I could be wrong. Anyway, where were we? There's more guns now in Australia than ever before. There's no Second Amendment, so there's no guaranteed right to keep and bear arms. Now, Mr. Albanese, that's the new prime minister, or the current prime minister of Australia. Immediately following the Bondi Beach attack, he had a presser and was talking about how Australian gun laws are too lax. And recently, it was on the 23rd, so it was a week ago. I'm recording this on the 30th, by the way. So on the 23rd of December, they had another presser discussing things that they want to change nationally. Now, each state in Australia has different gun laws, much like each state of the states here in the United States. Some firearm laws differ. Now, Western Australia, as far as I understand, have the strictest firearms laws, and then some of the other laws are just a little bit different. Now, basically the way I understand gun laws to be in Australia, in fact, let me pull this up. I guess I'll have some show notes to share you. Let me pull this up here. It's going to take me a second. Okay. So I went state by state. I asked Grok to help me. So I guess consider that into this information. But I wanted to know what the laws were previous to post Port Arthur, but previous Bondi Beach shooting, and what the proposed laws are. So I think we should talk about this. So yeah, I will have this available to you guys. Excuse me about the stuffy nose here. Okay, New South Wales. By the way, like I said before, I love Australia. Australia's full of some really cool people, Australians, but they have a major immigration issue that's changing the demographic and really making it a mess for Australians. And I think, just like I think we need to worry about that in this country, but really we're seeing it at a state level. I think are seeing it at a national level just because of their numbers. So Australia has about 27 million people in the whole country. Okay, we're at 300 and something million. I can't remember. I have that number somewhere else, but we are I think 13 times bigger population-wise than Australia. So you got to hold that into consideration as well. They have a little bit of immigration. It can really change what their national identity is. Okay, so New South Wales. So before the Bondi Beach attack, there was, maximum firearms per license holder. So they classify, the way it works in Australia is each firearm has a classification, A, B, C, and I can't remember exactly. And so there's restrictions per class of firearm, plus there are some restrictions as far as possession, like how many firearms you can own. So in some state, like this is all state specific. So in New South Wales, so this is Sydney, there was no limit to how many firearms an individual could have. There was no strict caps. There was a limit on what kind of guns, but as far as the total amount, there wasn't really a guideline there. Now, after the Bondi attack, they're putting a cap at four firearms. If you have agricultural use, or if you have a good reason to need a firearm, a very good justifiable reason, you can have maybe up to 10, but it's up to the federal government to determine that. Well, in this case, it's up to the state level to determine that. Their licensing was every 5 years in New South Wales. Now it is 2 years. They've dropped it to 2 years with some evaluation every time. It's like basically getting a psychological evaluation, easy for you to say, every time you get your license. Okay, you're going to get audited every 2 years, and as far as I know, the cops can come in anytime and inspect how you're storing your guns and your ammunition, because your ammunition has to be locked up as well. Eligibility. So any citizen or permanent resident before the Bondi attack could possess a firearm. Now, these proposed laws, only citizens and a very few non-citizens can obtain a firearms license. Firearms classifications. Okay, so A and B. This is as far as I understand. Category A and Category B. So they're pump action shotguns and like slide action rifles. That's Category A and B. You could have those. Now, after the attack, they're going to reclassify to Category C. So now pump actions and bolt actions, they're going to be Category C, which is difficult to get. There's a ban on belt-fed magazines, which I didn't know they could have belt-feds, but that's cool. And anything that needs to be that can shoot a lot of rounds without being reloaded, they're going to that's a no-go. Magazine capacity was only limited for Class A and Class B, but now everything's limited up to 10 rounds. Some are limited at 5 rounds, but the most rounds you can possess, that a firearm can possess, is 10 rounds. I don't know what the NCAT appeal is. I really don't know what that means. But now everything is going to be reviewed by local police. Everything. As far as you're trying to appeal something, it goes straight through the police. Storage requirements. It was required previous to the attack, but there was no mandatory inspections. But you had to be able to. I think there was an initial inspection, but you had to store everything. Now, what's proposed is mandatory inspections. And you're going to be, it's going to be extremely tight. It's going to be extremely tough to be allowed to have a gun. In New South Wales, you did not need to be a member of a shooting club before the Bondi Beach. I almost said Pam Bondi, which is kind of true. It wasn't really much of a Freudian slip. It's kind of reality. After the Bondi, you have to be a member of a club. There has to be a digital record of you being a part of that club. But they're also going to include certain things that could disqualify you from firearms ownership, as well as your club membership. Victoria. I've never been to Victoria. So before, it was very similar to New South Wales. Let's see. So maximum number of firearms. There was no really strict cap, just depended on your reason. And they're going to keep it that way. As far as state laws, licensing terms was 5 to 10 years. So Victoria sounds like they actually had the most pro-gun laws in the country. So 5 to 10 years, they're not going to change it, but they're going to review it. They might change it. Actually, all their future laws, all their laws they have now are going to be under review. They just haven't mentioned what they're going to do. Citizens and permanent residents were allowed to possess firearms. They're not going to change that, but it's under consideration. Classifications, all of their classifications inside the state aligned with their National Firearms Act, their laws. Again, those laws are going to be under review. Magazine capacity, they're aligned with previous state law. They're not going to change it. They're going to talk about it though. There's still storage requirements. They're not going to change those. NFA disqualifiers. So I'm assuming things that could get your firearms license revoked. They are changing that a little bit. The chief commissioner will examine the gun laws. He's going to make some changes as necessary. That sounds like what's going to be. All right, Queensland. Another fairly free state as far as Australia is concerned. There was no number of gun cap. They're going to put that into consideration. 5-year licensing term. They're not going to change it. They're not going to change the eligibility. It's residents of the state. They're not going to change the classification of their firearms. They do not want to change, according to this, endorses national reforms in principle but not in action. It's refusing to do changes, at least rest changes. So Western Australia, this is where I live. This is Perth. This is the west side of Australia. They are going to change everything. So they had the strictest laws. Why is this one all weird? Now I can't read my... maybe I need to scroll down. There we go. Let's see. There was no cap for how many firearms, but they're going to change it to 5. Licensing term was 5 years, but now they're going to drop it between 1 and 5 years, depending on the person. Eligibility is going to stay with the state resident. Classifications updated in March. I think they had some kind of attack this last year, and they changed it already. The firearms classification. And WA, Western Australia, is totally in support of changing the national gun laws. And they're happy to fall in line with whatever the federal court decides to change, or the federal government, decides to change. South Australia, it was all like they just followed the national requirements, and they're not going to change anything other than looks like some of the recreational hunting is definitely allowed. It's really rural. South Australia is really rural. Most of Australia is rural, let's be honest. Almost all the residents live on the coast of Australia. They're going to work with federal on as far as recreational hunting. They're not going to put a ban on recreational hunting, but there's going to be some kind of registry that happens. They're going to be pushed federally. I think all these states are going to be pushed into reform. Capital Territory, which is the capital of Australia, right? It says they're not going to change much as far as maximum firearms per license holder. There's no limits. It opposes limitations, which actually really surprised me. It's pretty lefty there. Licensing term is 5 years. They don't want to change it. They say residents should have firearms. They've recently eased some of the waiting periods as far as purchasing, and they're really concerned about rushing into making changes to firearms laws. I find it really interesting. Now, they nationally, Albanese wants to change and push every state into adopting these national gun laws, right? They're trying to blanket across there. They don't want any licensee to have more than 4 guns, maybe 10, and if you live out in the out in the middle of nowhere in the bush. They do not want anybody other than Australian citizens to have guns, which should be that way anyways in some cases, right? They want to shorten the licensing terms. They want to reclassify a lot of firearms and make them harder to get. They want to expand the registry, their National Firearms Registry, which, pay attention, America, this is why we're talking about this. They just plan on dumping $100 million to expand that registry. They want to do an amnesty through their buyback program. So they have this scheme, just like what you think it is. Obviously, you can't buy back something you've never owned, but Australia is going to do it. And again, this is what anti-gunners in our country want to do. So you need to pay attention to what Australia is doing with as far as this is concerned. They want a buyback scheme all over again. There are guns that still exist in Australia that were not sucked up during the first buyback in '96, but they're hoping to get those confiscated from law-abiding citizens this go around. And they want to increase the criminal liabilities or whatever happens. You know, if you are to do something with a firearm, they're going to make those. They're going to make it harder on those criminals. And they also want to make licensing really difficult. Again, you're going to be under constant scrutiny in Australia. Now, they haven't really settled on any of these federal laws yet. I just watched another presser from the Australian guy. Actually, it was one from a few days ago. They haven't really fortified any of these laws on the national level, but again, they're pushing each state to adopt these laws. Australia is not the United States. Okay, this is something that we need to really, really understand. Australia is not the United States. We fought against tyranny to establish a free nation where citizens were allowed to pursue happiness, to pursue private property ownership, and to enjoy what God created and not what government grants. Now, Australia, you got to understand, or you got to remember, it started as a penal colony. They were all convicts. Of course, the British Crown was not going to allow the scum that they just exiled to this deadly desert continent. They didn't want them to have a way to revolt and fight back. So they really restricted the ability of these citizens, if you will. But you also got to understand, they didn't just dump these criminals there. There were military units also on the island to keep the peace. So they weren't going to just allow these convicts to fight back against this military might. Plus, they weren't going to be able to because of disparity of force. They didn't grow up with a tradition of disobedience, lawful disobedience, I guess, of fighting tyranny. They kneeled to the crown. They didn't spit on it. So you cannot compare the two. Now, these new laws that are going to be proposed to our Australian gun friends, it sucks. It sucks a bunch. And I'm sorry that you have to deal with this. But it's what you guys voted for. Like you and I get it. The political system is not a one-to-one comparison either. Not just as far as civil rights are concerned, but just the voting structure is not the same. I get it. But it's your leadership that's pushing this. You are allowing this to happen within your country. I have friends in Australia. I know there's one friend in particular that's going to hear this, and he's going to be disappointed that I say this. And he doesn't feel this way. I know this. But you're allowing the leadership of this country, of your country, to continue to allow violent people within its borders. You restrict Australians, you restrict their ability to defend themselves by making it extremely, extremely dangerous for a citizen litigiously. You're going to go to jail if you defend yourself. And then you restrict firearms possession. But you do nothing to restrict bad people coming in. From what it sounds like, they probably knew that they did know. They've known for a while that there's a problem with radical Islam within the boundaries of Australia. They've known. They've had other Islamic attacks. And instead of identifying the problem and closing off the drippy faucet from where these problems are coming from, they open the faucet more. And then when a violent attack happens, they spank law-abiding citizens and do nothing to solve the issue. They're just creating more issues. Now, I'm surprised that the Australian government hasn't said, like some of the other shithole islands in the world, well, our gun problem, it comes from the United States. That's what Puerto Rico keeps saying. No, you have a violence problem. You don't have a gun problem. You have a violent problem of gangs roaming the streets unchecked. Or you have a corrupt law enforcement segment that just turns a blind eye to it. Not saying that's what happens in Australia. But they've known that they've had a violence issue that's been arising, and they're not stopping where that's coming from. Now, if you haven't heard, they're increasing the rhetoric as far as what do I mean by that? That's not really what the right phrase, but freedom of speech is out the window in Australia. They're restricting speech. So anything that might hurt somebody's feelings is going to get you in trouble. They just arrested a guy. As shitty as a tattoo as you might have on the back of your leg I think it was a white power with an SS on the dude's calf. They arrested the guy because he had this hate speech tattooed on his body. Is it an ugly tattoo? Yeah, it probably is. And maybe that was a part of his past life that he's no longer a part of. But because it might hurt somebody's feelings, they arrested that guy. He wasn't being violent. He wasn't threatening anybody. Didn't punch anybody on the beach. He just enjoying his day down there in Australia. They're restricting speech. There's a bigger task force. They're increasing surveillance. But they're doing nothing to stop the supply of where the violence is coming from. Now, you can take away all the tools you want. You can take away guns, you can take away knives, but you better start taking away cars. You better start taking away everything. But in reality, the only people that are suffering are the ones that are obeying the law. You're seeing this in Great Britain. You see these mobs of radical Islamists that have swords and machetes. Somehow they're getting guns. Knives are supposed to be illegal, right? You're not supposed to have machetes and swords, but yet these individuals that are transplants from another country are bringing in these implements of violence and using them for violence. Yet they take away the ability for someone to use the same type of item for a defensive purpose. This is why it's so important that we wake up in America. These restrictive laws are exactly what folks like Giffords and Everytown and Soros and the World Economic Forum, like all these people want to restrict Americans' rights that are constitutionally protected. It's the second thing the founders saw fit to put in the things that we want our citizens to have. There must be a reason for it, right? And if there's a strong reason that the founders saw to keep that right available to law-abiding citizens, it should be important to understand then why are these groups and these people so adamant to take them away? Now they're going to say, well, it's because of the children, right? We got to think about the children. I mean, guns are the number one killer of children in the United States. As long as you don't count abortion, accidents, drownings, medical issues, if you don't count those and you say children also include up to 24 years old, then you would be right. But you're manipulating numbers and regurgitating them. And then these fools online think that those are real. Just like, well, I saw this Aussie guy on Twitter. I told you I spend too much time on Twitter saying, well, America has 50,000 gun deaths every year. Okay, well, tell me about the numbers. Of course, he's not going to tell you about the numbers. That's just something he saw and regurgitated. 60% of those are suicide. Is that fair to count as violent gun deaths? No, of course not. Now, any violent gun death is too many, right? I totally agree. But removing a tool and not the desire to commit a heinous act, it's not going to change anything. It's not going to help society. Also, again, population, 27 million compared to 300 and something million. It's apples to grape nut cereal. Like they're not the same. It's not the same. I'm probably more likely to get attacked by a great white shark when I jump into the ocean, the west coast of Australia, if I want to go surf at Margaret River. I'm probably far more likely to get attacked by a great white shark there than I am here in southeast Idaho walking down the sidewalk. Don't you think? Well, we've got to do something about that shark population. There's violent shark attacks. Stupid. It's a stupid argument. You cannot compare the two countries, especially when you don't even count the defensive gun use. Australia, you can't defend yourself from a violent attack. On the low end in the United States, and I know you guys have heard this before, but you're going to hear it again. Defensive gun use happens thousands of times a day. Thousands. The CDC in 2011, I wish I could bring you these receipts, but they deleted it conveniently off their website. But I think it was somewhere around 3 million defensive gun uses a year. And then John Lott from Crime Prevention Research Center said, hey, that can't be right. So he did the research and found even more. Wow. You see, you cannot compare the United States and its reporting system on crime and gun crime. You can't count that and just cookie cutter that with any other country, because every country disseminates crime reports in different ways. Just like we saw during the Biden administration, not all states reported crime. Not all states reported crime equally. Let's put it that way. So it skewed the numbers. Just like if we're looking from every country, you think that Juarez, Mexico, reports all the firearms deaths that they see every day? No. They're not reporting it to the FBI. They're not reporting it to their national police service. The numbers are not the same because they're not being told. The same story is not being told everywhere guns exist. Yet we're the red-headed bastard child because these idiots just soak up any kind of propaganda that they hear that makes them feel good. And that's the key right there. All of this misinformation, this false information that gets shared is about eliciting an emotional response. When we make emotionally based decisions, they're usually the worst decisions that can be made. Instead of looking at a problem, analyzing it, and fixing the issue, the left and the anti-gunners continue to go to a knee-jerk emotional response to manipulate your feelings into drastically altering the freedoms of the United States citizen. We are seeing a vast amount of fraud and people that are coming into this country that may not see freedom the same way you or I do, or the boomer generation did, or those who fought in World War I. They are not part of the American system. They are not part of the American ethos, the creeds, the traditions. They do not understand what made America great and what saved all these other countries from so much evil over and over again. It's the resilient, patriotic blood that flows through every red-blooded American. The ones that grew up in a free country that understand freedoms, that will fight for it at all costs, that know how to use firearms because they've been hunting their entire life, that understand the tool for support and supply, and also to deter an evil, awful element that wants to take away our freedom. If you want to end up in a country that you get in trouble for defending yourself, if you want to live in a country that is not violence free, if you want to live in a country that controls every aspect of your life, whether it be what you say, the signs that you make, what you put online, and what you choose to defend your family with, that's the exact cookie cutter example of what they want the United States to become. They want us dependent and helpless. And I, for one, will not comply. I understand what a firearm does. I understand what freedom means. And I understand what the Second Amendment is and how our founders understood it and why they put it where they did. It blows my mind. It blows my mind. But nonetheless, Australia has the best ginger beer in the world. All right, friends, I have no idea how long this video is. And there's very little editing that I'm going to do to it. You're just going to get another raw episode from me, because I know you like it raw. If you liked what I had to say in this episode, please like, share, subscribe. If you have any comments, whether it be on Australia or whether it be with the USPSA lawsuits, please put those down in the comment section of these videos, whether it be on YouTube or Rumble, even if it's on Spotify. We need to have these conversations. We need to have real conversations, and we need to understand where our enemies are coming from and why they think the way they do. I mean, just read Sun Tzu, right? That alone will help you understand the why. It's important. We live in the greatest country in the world. I don't care what other people say. We live in the greatest country in the world. Our leadership is definitely not perfect. I have made my emotionally powered or fueled rants about who we have in office and who he has selected. I still don't think Trump is a 2A president. I don't care what people say. Has he done good things for the Second Amendment? Yeah, absolutely. But he's done a lot of things to hurt it. And Pam Bondi and the rest of those clowns in Washington are just following suit. We're being played, but that's not what this show's about. That's not what this episode's about. You guys are absolutely awesome. Thanks for hanging out if you did. I truly appreciate you. Don't forget, I mean, we are one election away from losing everything. Always. Okay? That's what Reagan said, and it's true. Enjoy what we have. Share your freedoms and your passion with, whether it be the Second Amendment or the First Amendment, I don't care. Share your passion for freedom with those around you. It's intoxicating and it's contagious. That's why I always tell you to take somebody to shoot. Take somebody with you to go shooting, because it's an eye-opening experience for some of these folks. Okay? I need you to do a couple more things for me. Okay? I need you to stay safe. I need you to stay armed. And I need you to stay range-minded. Love you guys. See you later.